We're going to have a conversation about national polls versus polls in swing states and battleground states. So right now, I would say Democrats have a reason to be optimistic. If we look back at polling data, really just 4 years ago, this is exactly where Hillary Clinton was at this same time in 2016. She was ahead. It would fluctuate between 6.7 and 8.8 points ahead of Trump, really up through November. And right now, where do we see Biden? Nationally, in the Harris poll, we have Biden 49.9%, CBS poll to Trump 42. So he's up 7 points in CBS. USC poll has Biden at 52 and Trump at 42. The Harris poll has Biden at 53 and Trump at 47. So he's 10 points in the USC poll, up 6 points in the Harris poll. The poll that has him the closest, really going at almost an even race, is the Emerson poll. That one is a week older, whereas these other polls are within the last 48 hours. So they're slightly newer. But for those just now joining on IG and Facebook and YouTube, Shonda is going to be joining. She's finishing up working with a candidate right now, so she'll be coming in. We've got some hardworking folks out here. So if you're just joining, we're talking about, let me put up the banner, election polling specifically. Right. Biden's up 7, up 10, up 6, up 8. So it fluctuates between really 6 and 9. We could say roughly 7% nationally. Is it reason for Dems to be optimistic? Yes. Does that mean folks should stay home because they just assume, well, he's up high, it's more than likely going to be Biden? Clearly, we know that's not the case. Now, I'm not one of these kind of conspiracy theorists, don't trust any polls, but I'm also of the mind that we saw polls lead people kind of down a path that's unhealthy 4 years ago. And this is why we had this conversation, Shonda and I, on the show 3 weeks ago, saying, regardless if you're in a red or a blue state, every vote's going to matter. And we saw in Michigan, which is traditionally a blue-collar, blue-voting Democratic state, we saw former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton lose that state by less than 1% margin. So folks really need to, I would say, pay less attention to the polls unless that's part of your, if that's part of like what you're studying or if that's part of your profession. You pay less attention to the polls and pay more attention to your voter registration. We don't have direct election for public officials. We have this Electoral College system, which we're going to talk about in the middle of the hour in about 10 minutes or so. This Electoral College system kind of bastardizes this idea of democracy. But for the purposes of how we conduct elections, these national polls, while not irrelevant, not as significant as how Biden and Trump are polling in those key states. Specifically, how Biden and Trump are polling in Florida, in Michigan, and Wisconsin, and North Carolina. As we know, former President Obama carried North Carolina twice. That was a big deal because he flipped it, right? But then what happened 4 years later, 2016, Trump versus Clinton? Trump flipped North Carolina back. So that is a legitimate swing state, right? That's where the term comes from. It can swing, but if within 3 election cycles you see it flip from party to party, it's a swing state. And that's the case for North Carolina. And that's the case now for Wisconsin. So in these traditional swing states, in North Carolina, Biden's polling 2 points ahead. But again, we should not view that as, oh, this is a Biden road to victory. You should view that really as an even race. Biden has reason to be concerned, one, because the Democrats lost that just 4 years ago, but also because a 2% lead before October, which who knows what type of news can break in October, if you're familiar, the October surprise, that can be an opportunity for Trump to use resources and spend a lot of time in a state. Everybody, Shonda is now in the house, and we're still talking about election polling. The point that I'm trying to make right now is that if folks want to get excited, they want to feel better about going into the weekend, if you're a Democrat, yes, go ahead and pay attention to national polls. If you're a damn, Biden is leading 6 points, 8 points, 10 points. If you look at the USC poll, 8 points the CNN poll, 7 points the Reuters poll. So if you want to feel good about yourself, like, you know what, I need to have something to take my mind off of the chaos that has been our reality, then go ahead and look at general election polls. But if you want to have a broader sense of what could happen in November, I would encourage folks to take a look at the polls in the swing states. I wanted to use Florida last because that's one of the key swing states. Mm-hmm. And Biden's closed the gap. And this is promising for Democratic leaning voters. The numbers in Florida should, again, give you reason to think positively. He was down 2 just 3 weeks ago. And then going into the Republican convention, Biden was trailing by a percentage point. And as of yesterday, they're even. So in Florida, again, it's a 48-48 race. It's really a dead heat. We'll see. And nationally, Biden is up, but in the states that matter, it's close. In North Carolina, Biden's up 2, but it's really they're polling even. In Michigan, Biden's up 5, but 5 is fairly close. 5 is actually a good spot to be in considering they lost the state. And in the last one in Wisconsin, Biden is up 8. So
which one did you say he's up 5 in?
Biden is up 5 in Michigan.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Biden's up 5 in Michigan.
Yeah.
And he's up 8 in his home state in Pennsylvania. But, and this kind of leads into what we wanted to discuss next. The reason that the reason that national polls don't matter is because we don't hold direct elections, which to me, and this is just my opinion, is completely contrary and antithetical to the ideals of what democracy ought to mean and what it means. Because we have this relic of our country's slave past that's really dictating how we vote for president. And to me, it's kind of a sad anti-democratic reality that's really been able to survive all this time because of who is benefiting from it. So for those that are unfamiliar, just a quick background.
A little history lesson.
Yeah, a quick little, come to Mr. Mason's neighborhood. The Electoral College was one of the agreements or negotiations that allowed for the ratification of the Constitution. So if you think about it, there's several compromises. You have the 3/5 compromise, which led to ratification. You had the slave trade compromise, which said that Congress can't pass any laws or not even going to put the commerce, like trade, like slavery, that's not going to come up for debate. Really, they held it off until 1808. And you have the Electoral College, right? Amongst some other compromises, but those are the major ones. And the compromise was because you had folks who believed that only this small delegation of people ought to have the authority to determine who president is, whereas you had these other folks saying, no, we should be entrusted with this power. Mm-hmm. So the compromise is, well, everyone gets to vote, but then there's a small delegation of electorates that ultimately determine. That's why in November, we don't know who president is officially, because it gets passed on. Oh my God, what's going on? It gets passed on, right, to later in November to early December when the Electoral College officially determines who's going to be president. But again, why does this country operate with what our ancestors did, and not even our ancestors, but really what the framers of this country did when we're such a vastly different country? It's upsetting. I don't know how many debates you got into in school with the Electoral College, and I love just like even hearing kids' perspectives on this, because they're the ones that are just now entering the electorate. They get to, some of my kids are fortunate to, my students, for those of you that are like new to the show, I have no kids yet, one day if I'm lucky. My students get just to hear them kind of debate whether or not the Electoral College ought to exist in 2020. Now, it made sense 150 years ago, right? But in 2020, does it still make sense for us to be voting for this small delegation of electorates that ultimately determines the fate of the country for the next 4 years? To me, the answer is no, but I'm a fan of democracy. Maybe there's folks who say, you know what, we have to consider small states more. What do you say when people say, yeah, but if we abolish the Electoral College, small states will get ignored?
But that's not true. I mean, you still have representation for your state. For me, it's interesting hearing the arguments that people make, because I remember in AP Gov, AP History class, this was a while ago now. This is in high school. But, when you're learning about all of these things, how government works, that was one of the questions that people always had. So you're explaining to someone, okay, this is the system we have in place. We say that we have a democracy, that everyone should participate in it.
Yeah.
But then there's always a few that then go back and then they question, well, how does democracy then work for me if you're saying my vote doesn't count when we don't go off the popular vote? It's one thing I've never understood either, because bottom line is that in everything else, we have votes. So majority wins. So I don't understand why we have this other obstacle then when we're saying for a general election that we're going to go off of numbers of the electorates. It doesn't make any sense to me. It's another conversation for another day. But then, we can also one day talk about like the caucuses, how those are set up, and and how those actually impact the election. But I guess like mentioning at the beginning of when we learn about these things. So even Schoolhouse Rock, right? Everyone, I believe, takes some kind of civics class in middle school. And then we're all shown, well, at least at one point in time, we were all shown Schoolhouse Rock, a bill is a bill, that whole thing. But the one thing that I feel has stayed with some people, and these are the people that choose not to vote, have never voted, is that they feel as if, well, why should I vote if it doesn't, like the results are going to come out differently? And it is something that's very hard to reconcile when you're telling people you still should go out and vote.
Yeah.
And so the only thing I can really give them is that you're choosing to be part of the majority that is participating in this to make a difference. Because again, if no one chooses to vote in your state, well, then that also reflects the numbers as well. Hence why we have those small percentages that determine who wins the vote. We saw that in Georgia with Hillary, like into the 2016 election, how that small percentage of people that chose not to vote actually helped Trump win. And it's so unfortunate, but I mean, that's like it's a math thing, but it's also facts. So
yeah,
you just have to hope that people show up. Oh, go ahead.
So we got a comment that says, and also perhaps we need to strip the powers from the Senate and treat it like a House of Lords and give more power to the House. Yeah, because really, if we think about our two chambers of Congress, there's only one chamber of Congress that's like truly representative of the people, right? The House of Representatives is the body that is a representation of what the people, albeit in smaller districts, right? Representative districts, but that's the body that we look to. It's like, you know what? You are our voice. And that's what we should have in the highest office in this country. So to kind of bring it full circle, we start off looking at election polling, and why does it matter? General election polling doesn't matter. We should really only look at, so in this conversation, we should only look at swing state and battleground state polling. That's nonsense. We only look at 7 states every 4 years. What if you're in Alaska? What if you're in one of the Dakotas, right? We only look at 7 states. And again, this dumb system is the reason that we only look at that handful of states. We only look to Colorado, Nevada, Florida, Pennsylvania, Ohio. Arizona hasn't gone blue in our lifetime.
I'm saying they always seem to make it, though, to the conversation for their Senate races.
Although, speaking of Arizona, Mark Kelly is up in Arizona by 17 points over the incumbent McSally. Yeah, Mark Kelly, astronaut, husband of former Congresswoman Gabrielle Giffords. Yeah, he's up big. That poll again is 7 days old, but hopefully it holds true, because to have a Dem in that seat would be glorious. And I believe McSally was the one who was appointed to fill McCain's seat, correct? That's what the seat is. They're battling for, McCain's seat. Correct us if we're wrong, folks. I believe that's what it is. I could be wrong. It's okay. What your thoughts are on folks who choose to how they're going to cast a ballot by looking at just singular issues?
So, okay. So there's a few things. For people who have never voted, and I know some people who have never voted. I've known people that have voted and they stopped voting. So for some people, I think it's a little bit different, right? Like I can't put out a blanket answer to that, because for whatever reason is going to bring you back into the fold to participate in this, to protect the democracy, I'm all for it. If that was one issue that is leading you now to go to the polls and vote, cool. Now, if that's what is encouraging you to come out, that's great. However, I still think that you owe yourself, your family, your community more than just one issue. So we should not say, oh, okay, we're going to vote for this candidate because because I care about climate change, right? But then there's a lot of, then when you start to weigh, okay, well, what other things is this candidate saying he or she will do for the community? So if those things are not really reflective of, just more than one issue, so it's just like other things that you care about or things that have the potential to harm other people, I think that those things should be weighed in, because for instance, right now I don't have children. I hope to someday to have children, so it would not be wise of me to actually consider the people that are running that don't care about public education or allowing us to have the opportunities for those, to have improvements within our educational system. So I understand that naturally we all are going to gravitate towards the things that we can see, like what benefits us in this moment. But it doesn't take for me to have to be that I've had to be poor to understand that we actually should care about people who have less than ourselves. That's, I've just been seeing like a lot of comments on Facebook or, just on the internet about that. And it's just really interesting, like, because they always talk about socialism and these welfare or social programs that they feel as if, Democrats only care about just giving handouts to those individuals. But the thing is that at what point do we say we actually want people to have like equal footing? Like we want to help them so that they can actually get out of this system that they're in. So for me, I don't believe that we should only vote for a candidate because of one particular issue to close it out.
Yeah, I have a shorter answer to this idea of single issue voters. What's up, Edgar? I see some of my people in IG. And my response is this: it is the height of privilege to determine that the ballot you are casting is based on a single issue, because and really we usually boil it down to like 3 issues, and you can correct me. You said climate change. I just gave that as an example. But and there could be people who do vote based just on the candidate's position on climate change. I don't know those people. I know people who that's part of a list, or that is part of a group of plank issues that an individual might cast a ballot for. I honestly don't know a single person that is going to cast their ballot just on a candidate's position on climate change.
Yeah.
But that's not true for abortion or same-sex marriage or guns. And that's what got me. So when we talk about what topics we're going to break it down, that's what So for me, when I go into it, like recently, I've been going to a gun shop like to pick up ammo. There's a table outside with these people saying, "Here, sign this recall of Gavin Newsom petition." And I just kind of look at them stupid, like, what? No. Why would I? There's only been one person to actually ask me why not. Usually I say no. I say no, thank you, and they just keep it pushing. But one person actually, I'm going into a gun shop and they just assume like, well, because I support people that are gun enthusiasts and people that are into this sport. Like they just assume I want Gavin Newsom recalled. And I'm just like, no, if you cast your ballot for just one issue, whether it be guns or whether it be like, you're just, okay, I won't call them names, but you have a different worldview than me. Mm-hmm. That's a nicer way of saying it. Because yeah, while I support people having a right to owning firearms and engaging in that sport, or if you want it for just self-defense, you don't even shoot at targets. Like if you just have for home defense, like I'm fine with that. But I'm not going to vote or try to recall a governor who I agree with on every other issue. Literally, his entire platform I support, with maybe the exception of his position on guns. So it's like, if you don't want people who are gonna there's so much that I could say on this. And I know we're getting short because we want to answer some of these questions, but it's like, you're not going to vote for a candidate because of their position on same-sex marriage. How does someone else's position, like if you don't support same-sex marriage, don't marry someone of the same sex. Like, is that difficult?
Yeah. And a lot of this too, and so this conversation was sparked because we were talking about the comments that Trump made about military veterans and that whole thing that played out for a few days in the media. So my thing is as we're talking about this, your encounter when you were at the gun shops, and we know that there's people, like I see Grace here. She said, I know people writing in because they don't want to vote for Trump, but they won't vote for Biden because of abortion. And I'm not sure what else to say to them. Yeah, if you don't want an abortion, don't get one. She also made that comment. And my thing is that I have no problem letting people know. I mean, I'm a believer, I'm a Christian, but I also don't do well with we're going to pick and choose on things, because I know that we all have free will. So it's not for me to push my religion on anyone. And so that's the one thing that I don't appreciate from the other side, because it is a lot of times them. And I'm also not here to say that there aren't people who are believers that are Democrats or people of faith in general. But the problem that I'm seeing is that we then begin to categorize one party as holding like more values than another party because of these two issues, same-sex marriage and abortion. But I also want people to know there's still sin in other ways, like just lying, being a hypocrite. I mean, doing all of these like deceitful things, that still doesn't take away from these other things that we might be looking at. And so to say that you're not going to vote for someone because, in fact, they're saying that they're okay with funding like Planned Parenthood or these other programs that still help people, it's sad. And so, I mean, we shouldn't do that, but unfortunately, like that's what has now become the norm. And it's unfortunate.
Yeah, I think the last half of Grace's comment, I'm gonna put it back up for folks.
Yeah, sorry about that.
Or excuse me, for folks watching on Facebook and YouTube. Mm-hmm. I don't know. So I know people writing in another candidate because they don't want to vote for Trump, but they don't want to vote for Biden because of abortion. And I'm not sure what to say to them. Well, I would say to them, do you care about the future of this country? Do you care about school children? Because if we look at who he appointed as the Secretary of the Department of Education, if you care about children in school, if you care about school, if you care about me, hey, look in the face, hey, do you care about me? I'm going to college and student loan debt is serious. Do you care about immigration policy? Do you care about the climate, the environment? Do you care? So there's do you care about your taxes versus the taxes of the wealthiest among us? Do you care? It's like, do you care about the response to COVID-19? So to me, this is why I just say it's the height of privilege to determine that you're going to vote for a person according to their
definitely
on one issue, because there's so many issues that impact us all pretty significantly. It's not like these are all these issues like, well, it doesn't, I don't see it, it doesn't affect me. It's just like, well, it does. It may not affect you as dramatically as somebody else, but of course it affects you, and you should care about it if you care about other people. Now, if you're just selfish and you don't care about other people, sure, go ahead and vote based on same-sex marriage. Go ahead and vote based on abortion. Go ahead and vote based on guns. But if all the other stuff matters to you, then you shouldn't be voting just on one issue. You should vote on how the candidates view a range of issues that are of importance to you.
Yeah, that's so true. I agree with you, Grace. Right. How do you care about unborn fetuses but not caged kids on the border?
Yeah, that's right there. That's it, right? How do you care?
Simply finding a solution to our immigrant, like I think that's like the biggest issue I have, is that the immigration has been a big issue for a long time, like outside of just the last 12 years. But it's the fact that no one wants to take on addressing like the actual immigration code, like the system.
Yeah.
Because it is based off of white supremacy.
Yeah. You even had to slam something down to get that point across.
Oh.
All right. So I'm going to answer some of you that did respond either on Facebook or on Instagram to I put up last night. If you have questions that you want answered when we're live, then you can post them. And you can take any of these. I'm going to go out of order. Which party do you think is truly ready to defeat coronavirus and get us all back outside?
Oh, you mean like outside where I could be enjoying myself, not having to wear a mask, not feeling that I'm going to contract this virus? Is that outside?
I mean, I didn't write it. I think that's what they mean. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Out of the indoors.
Yes, without a mask, I would say. I don't think that's. I'm going to answer the question seriously. I definitely feel right. Sorry, I was just like, seems very rhetorical. But the Democratic Party right now, I think that they have a better plan in place to. They have a better plan to listen to science. Like, first off, they respect science. They've been listening. They didn't do what the Republicans did a few weeks ago. I just want to take this back to the RNC. I mean, on White House grounds, breaking laws and putting a number of people in one area, not wearing masks, did not take COVID tests.
But they didn't break any laws.
I'm saying breaking laws, yes, hatchet.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Stay on.
We're not. I'm all I'm
coronavirus.
Saying. Sorry. Coronavirus. Well, that still is with coronavirus. Bottom line is, I don't think that they have taken this virus seriously. And right now, we really need to be trusting like the professionals, those who are really experienced. And so for me, that is like one of the biggest things. Like, we're getting ready to go into the flu season. And so I feel like we really need to have a plan in place. And this isn't something it's not something to laugh about and something to just act as if this isn't a serious matter. Like, there have been people that have been dying. And so for me, I would say the Democratic Party. And not only that, because they really have tried to put together a plan to make sure that people and small businesses, that they've been protected and that we're going to get through this. So that'd be my answer.
Yeah, I would say very quickly, I believe it is the party that doesn't have an individual that has made decisions based on politics rather than science. I would say the party that has not removed a reputable, nationally recognized physician who is, Dr. Anthony Fauci is what is his title? what type of doctor is he? Epidemiologist, I believe. So like the country's like most, I don't know, successful, popular epidemiologist.
I'm gonna check.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. So it's like, no, because he's been silenced, and he's been silenced because he's acknowledges facts.
Oh yeah.
Anthony Fauci has said we could have had a better response. We could have had a better response if we acted sooner. And like, so yeah, I would say, just to be quick and move on to the other questions, I would say the Democratic Party, because I think they would allow science to dictate their decision making and not politics. Next question is, ooh, that's a big one. I'm gonna save that one because that might not be a quick one. All right,
10 minutes. So,
how hard did you laugh when all those votes in the Trump parade sank this weekend? I didn't laugh. I may have liked a few memes and a few Twitter posts, but I didn't. I think it's sad. You're familiar, right, with the boats that sank, like 8 of them?
My brother showed me this. He talked to me about it.
Yeah, I didn't laugh. I think it's sad that you have a figure that is able to influence like the masses so much so. I mean, you have people that are endangering themselves, because I don't know if the waters were actually safe before they went out there. And I've heard him referred to even by folks in his inner circle as kind of this cult leader. And he really has that type of effect on people. He really is kind of a cult leader. So I didn't laugh. I didn't laugh when the boat sank in the Trump parade. I just thought it was sad. And I hope folks come to their senses. I didn't know if you had anything.
No, I don't. Mm-mm.
Oh, we got a sports one.
Talk to me.
Did Steve Nash deserve to get the Brooklyn Nets head coaching job? I don't know if you're familiar with.
I'm going to let you take that.
Okay, so
yeah.
I'll tell you quick. So
he does a podcast segment with Al and Pals. I don't know when they're coming back. Al, I saw you were in here, so you might want to.
Yeah, so Al, it's not my show. This is Al Williams' show.
I know. I'm
show.
saying he's a guest panelist on there, but they cover sports, all things sports. So I'm gonna let Cliff take this.
They're actually going back tomorrow. So tomorrow, 8 o'clock Central. If you're interested in the Al and Pal show, you can find them on Facebook and on YouTube. They'll be going 8 o'clock Central. I think that's 6 o'clock Pacific for us, and then for you it'd be 9 o'clock. 9 p.m. So 8 p.m. Central tomorrow, Al and Pal show, and they'll probably talk about this, I imagine. So my thought is this: Steve Nash has never coached at any level. He's never been a high school coach. He's never been a college coach. He's never been an assistant coach in the NBA.
Oh, similar to what Trump's done, huh?
That's
telling you, those 4 years are rubbed off, but go ahead.
And you have available, brilliant, successful Black coaches that had experience, that have put in all of the work. And yet, for some reason, if Black coaches experience any type of failure, whether they don't make the playoffs for 2 consecutive seasons, or they have a star that is demanding a trade because they don't like the system, whatever it is, it can be as innocuous as the team is sponsored by a company that they just can't jive with and they want, whatever it is. Black coaches don't have an opportunity to have a diminished performance for a season or 2, whereas these white coaches continue to fail up. I mean, we're talking about failing season, losing season after losing season after losing season, and they continue to have the opportunity to get jobs. Whereas Mark Jackson, brilliant head coach. The Golden State Warriors would not be who they are but for Mark Jackson. Why hasn't he had another coaching job since Golden State? Jason Kidd, not a head coach. Derek Fisher, although he had a kind of tenuous relationship, he was coaching the Knicks. That's a trash organization. Like, I don't know why all of Brian Shaw, why doesn't he? Tyronn Lue won a championship, and I'm talking, it's not just 1 or 2. Like, if this is 1 or 2, people could say, Cliff, you're a little oversensitive. We're talking about almost a half a dozen Black available coaches that have not had an opportunity. And Steve Nash, who's never, all these players, these former players and people that I've named have been assistant coaches too, and have been head coaches. Steve Nash, who's now supposed to be coaching 2 bona fide superstars, 2 champions in Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving, They're going to have Steve Nash as their coach when you had all of these other black coaches with real experience available. What is the reason for this? It's unacceptable in a league that has 90% of its athletes that are black. All right. Whoever wrote that, thank you. I think you did that on purpose to get me fired up.
Exactly.
This is a short one. I'm going to give you this one. Why is it? I'm going to curse, but I'm reading it. Why is American politics so shitty? That's the question. That's the whole question.
Oh, that was the question.
Yeah. Why are American politics so shitty? I'm reading these. This isn't mine.
I know. I mean, it's a few reasons. For me, I think it's what people are willing to do just to be in power. And when they do have a sense of power, it's how they're influenced and what they do with it.
Yeah.
And because a lot of those things have not been corrected, this is where we are right now. In terms of things taking taking so long to have bills passed, no bipartisanship anymore. The fact that they've been able to put some of the people in these positions and not being questioned. I mean, me and Cliff, we were talking about this yesterday. Steve King, someone who's luckily he was primaried, but I mean, that man was in office for more than 20 years, I believe, serving in the United States Capitol, was making comments about women, making comments about Black people, about Muslim people, immigrants. I mean, all types of derogatory, racist comments. And I mean, that's one element. But then it's again like people being able to accept bribes in order for policies to be pushed. I mean, there's only a little bit of pushback, like fallout from that. But again, it's because these things have been built on corruption. So that's the short answer, I would say.
So before we answer the last questions, we got one more. Before we answer the last question, I'm going to give a quick plug to voting. So I just want to remind people, time is running out to fill out your census. You have about 2 weeks left to be counted. Please make sure that you fill out the census. It's critical for funding for so many programs that I can't list them all on here in just your community. So like this, again, is something that can impact you directly. It's not just about your representation in the House, which is super important, but also if there's kids in your neighborhood, right? Like programs in your community, that funding is determined by you filling out the census. So do that. And obviously.
And I can name a few. Oh, go ahead.
I was gonna say, if you haven't registered to vote, do that. Make sure you register to vote. If you've moved recently, if you have a change of address, if you got married, you have a name change, whatever it is, make sure that you have updated records with the Secretary of State's office and update your registration so that you get your ballot on time and your ballot's going to be official. And we can talk next week about where to drop off your ballot to make sure that your ballot's going to be accepted and collected.
Mm-hmm. So if you're on Facebook and you see the link that Cliff has put on here, vote.org, once you select your state and you put your address in, it will take you to it might take you to your state Secretary of State, one of those websites where it's very state specific, and it will outline then also for your district or your county where your county board of elections office is. So there have been some incidents where they might have sent their ballot in the mail. I would recommend to everyone that you actually go in person. Please take it in person and drop it off. Do not mail anything right now. It's so tight. Like right now, you're already in that window of people have been sent mail, like people are requesting their absentee ballots. and then there's an influx of absentee ballots going out, and then people still trying to apply to vote. So just make sure that, again, like, you pay attention to these deadlines and, like Cliff said, a lot of the requirements, because some people, they forget, like, you do have to change like, if you've moved, don't take any chances. Just change everything. And in terms of the census, as Cliff said, a lot of programs, things that a lot of the programs in our communities, the money is then brought in based on the census. So they can't use 10-year-old data, which is why they do it every 10 years. So for now, like for the next 10 years, they're going to use the census data that they received in 2020. And so in terms of, let's see, roads, highways, we have public education, all of these dollars are then divested to different things throughout our community. So you really want to make sure that you are counted, and you want to make sure your family members, like, they've also completed it as well. So if you have moved, please fill that out.
I don't know the answer to this question. Do you know if there are any programs to help collect ballots from rural areas? If you do, share that with the people.
I think I know of one. I don't want to say that and be wrong. So Grace, we will make sure that we share that. Cliff will let you know. I will talk to him offline about that.
All right. And I can add it into the description on the YouTube video afterwards.
Also, to contact, what I will say is, one of the short answers is contact your local. So every state has a Democrat, like a state party. So I would say contact the Democratic Party for your state. And then also there's I believe it's Equal Justice Initiative, or there's some other voter organization. So we'll let you know, because there's a lot that are doing some work. They are doing just that, like collecting ballots. And they're also going to make sure that people have a way to go to the polls if they're unable for any reason not to send out a ballot, or they don't feel comfortable doing that. There are people putting plans in place. Do we have another question? Oh, I see someone wrote a comment here. They said, we have volunteered to pick up ballots, but we don't have a great way to get the word out. So Tiana, I would suggest, if you are doing that, if you're volunteering, if you partner with an organization, those efforts might actually go a little bit further. If you partner with a local organization that's doing it, there are ambassadors from the campaigns that are doing this. Also with the Michelle Obama's organization, When We All Vote, they have voting captains. So they also would be able to help you. So we can put some stuff out. Exactly. Let's see. Yes, and the churches are also organizing. I see you said this church here. So yeah, so there's a lot of again, it's like it's gonna take a collective of people to do this. But this is good. It's great to see people are doing these things.
All right. Well, the last question, we can just cover it until the clock runs out on us, is how do we break up the two-party system? And this is why I said we couldn't do this one first, because this isn't a short answer.
Oh gosh.
Did you? Okay, so
I'll
break up the two-party system. Well, so it's not something that can happen in one election cycle, but it really has to start on the local level. People don't like hearing that. They want to break up the two-party system nationally, but we have to understand the two-party system is not. It's built into the DNA of our government. I mean, sadly, the laws are meant to protect those two parties. And we're saying those two, the Democratic and the Republican Party today. Obviously, over time, it's morphed. It was once we had the Whigs, and we've had the Democratic Republicans, if that makes any sense, right? We had Federalists. So obviously, the parties have changed over time, but it's really always been two parties, and that's because the laws are meant to protect them. But how you can go about kind of upending that, tradition is locally electing folks who are not members of those parties. And if you get folks who are not members of those major two parties into local positions, once they grow in their popularity, they can also, but also not just independents, because that's not enough. You're going to have people form new parties and get elected to local office. They're never going to break through into like a U.S. Senate seat until they have like some more national recognition. So it really starts as low as like commissioner, and then from commissioner, maybe a state rep, then maybe a state senator. And then once you have enough, it's like, maybe you can challenge an incumbent in a congressional seat. And then once you get that notoriety, if you can get to that point, let's say you form, I don't know, the light bulb party, because they're free thinkers. Oh, that was good. Don't.
Oh my goodness.
Anyhow,
Yeah.
so once they form,
thinking about this,
I promise you, because the light bulb's right here in my face. I almost said, anyhow, the light bulb party forms, and now you have Rep Lucy Douglas representing the light bulb party. And if more people, if she can get a bigger group of volunteers, if she can help get somebody else elected in the position that she previously held in her state, and then that person goes on, and then she runs for, so it really starts kind of grassroots. So the short answer is it's a long process, but what's going to have to happen is individuals that are not conforming to the major two parties have to seek local office, win, and grow a coalition large enough to get elected to congressional seats.
Yeah. And I'll piggyback off of that. I think what we will see over the next 20, 40 plus years, right? Like Cliff said, this is going to take time, but you've seen organizations like Emily's List that derive from seeing a need of, we need to have more female representation in Congress. So Emily's List, they wanted to have more women in Congress, but it wasn't just women. They wanted to have women that are going to protect women's rights. So then for Emily's List, those candidates, they seem to be more those are more Democratic women. And then they also have another organization that does that for trying to nominate more Republican-led women. So because these groups have been so isolated into, we want to have Democratic women or progressives or Republican, like conservatives, what will happen is you're going to see more of those grassroots organizations form that helped women like AOC and Cori Bush, who's now running for office. Like, they are looking at actual issues. And so I think that what we'll see is there's going to be a lot of candidates that begin to gain notoriety based on issues, but then it's also it's a little bit more than that. It's then deciding when we're not going to run as independents, but they're really going to have to hold firm to say that we're going to stand as our own. Because what happens is when you then get to Capitol Hill, you then caucus with, you have to then choose, like, who are you going to caucus with, right? Because the way things are built up right now, it's reflective of a two-party system. So until we actually get those people there to the U.S. Capitol, then those systems and those structures begin to change. But like Cliff said, it has to then change on a local level, and for people to begin to understand why we don't actually need a two-party system.
So this is my final, then we can cut it. There's another way that can happen much faster, and I can see this happening. If Biden loses this election, I can see the left wing of the party saying, I've had enough. We're going to branch off and create our own. That is focused on youth vote, that is focused on some of these, I'll say the squads, right? So like Ilhan Omar, we got 30 seconds. Ilhan Omar, Rashida Tlaib, Ayanna Pressley, and AOC. I could see them being the leaders of a new branch of the party to a point where they're just like, you know what, we're done with the party. And it's time for us to make our own. And IG ended, and we're going to be ending here too. I see one more comment. Hey, glad you're able to join us. So This has been another week. We apologize for all of the audio and visual kind of setbacks, but we don't have a big budget over here. We'll take care of it going forward. This has been your Political Truth Hour. And like I wrote on Facebook, if you can't handle the heat, get out the kitchen, because we're bringing political truth every week. We'll see you next Tuesday.